Scar! Brother, help me!
Long live the king.
Betrayal is so hard, isn't it? And the thing is, betrayal is something that I think all of us know. Either we've felt it ourselves or we know someone else who has. And how easy is it to watch a situation unfold in front of you like we just saw, and you find yourself wanting revenge. You find yourself wanting justice for the person who was just wronged. Or in this case, Mufasa, the Lion King. It's something I think within all of us that we want to protect ourselves as well as the ones we love. And therefore, there's something inside all of us called trust. And this trust is something that doesn't just affect the people who have wronged us, it affects everyone around us because of a few who have wronged us. So today we're continuing a message series, 5 Things God Uses to Grow Your Faith, except this week we're not specifically hitting one of the 5 things. This week we're sort of doing an overview of trust, because trust intertwines throughout the whole series. And so it was kind of an unplanned week, to be honest, but I wanted to pause this week and hit on this because I don't want us to go by it and miss this. It's such an important part of how God grows the faith, grows us up, matures us in our life as a Christian. Trust is a big part of that. It's so important. And if we were to break the Bible down, the Bible is composed of the Old Testament and the New Testament. A lot of you are like, okay, thanks, didn't know that. No, of course, most of us do know that. Bible is Old Testament, New Testament. But what you might not realize is the Old Testament and the New Testament are one beautiful story put together. The Old Testament is a story throughout it of God wanting to reconnect with a nation, the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel, God said, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you these laws. Just follow these commands. Follow the rules, so to speak. And these rules aren't there to prevent you from having something that you want or don't want. They're to protect you. They're to help you to have a better life. And then that went to the New Testament, where it's all about God wanting to have a relationship with everyone, not just the nation of Israel. It goes much broader than that to everyone on earth. And it's this beautiful story with lots of details in between, but it comes down to trust. Because when you go back to the original sin with Eve and with Adam, trust was the issue. The original sin wasn't just that they disobeyed God. It wasn't just that. It was that Eve said to herself, I think God's holding out on us. I think God's got something really good just over there. Why is he not letting us have it? I don't know if I trust him. So as an act of not trust, they did it anyways, because they figured it must be good. They doubted God could be trusted, that God was maybe holding back something that was really good. So man's problem began when we began to stop trusting God. And that moment changes the relationship. There's a relationship that God wants to have with all of us. History is full of times where God keeps trying to find ways to reconnect, and reconnect. So we get to the New Testament, and what changed about the New Testament is Jesus. Jesus, the Son of God, comes to earth with a purpose. And the purpose is to reconnect us to the Father. He's going to become that bridge, to bridge the gap between our mistrust, our own ideas of what we want. We think maybe God might have something better hiding around the corner, so I'm not going to listen to what he said and try this. And Jesus is trying to help establish trust. That's what he keeps doing over and over and over again. And I think it's something that we can understand, because isn't it hard to regain trust? Have you ever had someone that broke your trust, and wasn't it hard to just, sure, come on over, let's just act like nothing ever happened? No, the truth is we're a little standoffish. Some of us will have words. Some of us will say, I'm just not going to talk to them for a while. We just won't go to that family Christmas this year. I'm just going to change jobs because I don't want to deal with that boss anymore because I can't trust them. Trust affects a lot of parts of our life, even our marriages. And it's like all of us have an internal thermometer or a gauge, and it's a trust thermometer. And when that is low towards someone, it's cold towards someone, right? When it's low towards somebody, it's like your spouse or your people that are close to you are they're like, okay, what's wrong? Did you talk to so-and-so today? Because you're especially chilly today. Something riled you up. What? And it's like, yep, you can almost predict it, that they ran into that person, or they got a phone call or a text, or they posted on Facebook again about this, and it brought it all back. It's like it's fresh again, and that trust meter is just really low towards that person. But like I said, that can affect more relationships than just the one person that you intend to guard yourself with. You can actually mistakenly find yourself guarding towards everyone around you. So when we look at last week's story, last week we looked at the story of the feeding of 5,000 and Jesus and his disciples. And what happened there was amazing. And if you didn't catch that, go back. You can watch it on Facebook or our YouTube channel. It's amazing what we discovered that happened at that moment, because Jesus chose to do this miracle through the disciples. It wasn't a one-man show. It was through the disciples. The disciples didn't know what to do. But as you look at life through the eyes of a disciple, do you think you'd have a hard time trusting Jesus if you were a disciple? If you were a disciple, would you trust Jesus? If you were that person that Jesus walked to one day and said, come follow me. Come follow me. You know, he preached a really compelling message just before that, and you heard it, and you were moved, and you thought, I think I believe in this person, and you decide to leave your career, everything behind you, and you follow him. That's what these people did. They've left everything behind to follow this guy, Jesus. But do you think they trusted him fully right off the bat? I'll tell you the answer is no, they didn't. There's story after story of Jesus trying to build trust with his disciples. Think about this. Every day the disciples didn't know the schedule. They didn't know what was coming up. Like Jesus didn't sit down and say, okay guys, today, the plan is for today, here's what we're going to do. No, he didn't do that. Jesus didn't even say, okay, now this week we're going to go, or tomorrow. The disciples were constantly in the dark. Can you relate? They were constantly wondering, what's around the corner? What's going to come tomorrow? They've been in situations where people tried to kill them, tried to stone them, because they followed Jesus. They had been in situations where they were disliked, spit upon by people because they followed Jesus. Rejected in their temples where they'd grown up, like their church, so to speak. They grew up in their whole life, and their pastor, their priest, said, you're no longer welcome here. They had to leave a lot of parts of life behind to follow Jesus. And I think it made trusting difficult because they didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know the plan. Jesus only told them enough that they needed for that moment, day to day, what was going on. But I think we can relate, because I think we all have trust issues. And I think we especially have trust issues with God. So watch this with me, and we'll talk in just a minute.
Jesus, I just don't trust you.
You don't trust me?
No, I mean, I want to trust you. I just don't.
I have an exercise that I think will really help you.
Oh, okay.
Stand here and face this direction. Mm-hmm. Now, do you trust me?
No, I just said I don't trust you.
All right, well, this is all part of the exercise.
Oh,
all right?
right, okay.
Whenever I ask you if you trust me, you say, yes, Jesus, I trust you.
Even though I don't.
It's practice.
Okay.
So, do you trust me?
Yes, Jesus, I trust you.
Now, fall back.
Are you going to catch me?
Don't worry about that part.
Okay, that's the part I'm worried about.
You can do this, okay? Just trust me.
Trust you.
Fall back.
Okay, well, Jesus, I trust
Good.
you. Yes, I do trust you. I'm going to fall
Okay.
back. Woo!
Oh, okay.
That's great.
Let's try this again. Just face this direction and keep your feet planted, all right? Do you trust me?
Yes, Jesus, I trust you.
Now, fall back.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
All right.
I'm really going to do it. Okay.
Good.
Oh, Jesus, you really caught me! I didn't think you were going to catch me, but you did!
Oh, that was great!
That was great!
You're ready for level 2.
Level 2, here I
Yes.
come, baby! Woo! Whoa!
Okay, hold it.
Oh, you know what? You're too close. You need to move back.
Ah, right.
Okay.
This one's a little bit different,
Oh,
Laura.
okay.
Stand here,
Uh-huh.
but face me.
Woo! forward fall. I
Okay.
can do that.
Wait.
Whoa.
Okay. Wait for my signal.
Oh, right, the Jesus signal.
Yes, the Jesus signal. Do you trust me?
Yes, Jesus, I trust you so much.
Good. Fall back.
That's awesome.
It is awesome, especially when you do it.
Seriously?
Of course.
Okay, Jesus, I don't know if you noticed this, but there is nobody over there.
I know it looks that way to you.
It looks that way. It is that way.
You can do this, Laura. Just trust me and fall back.
Jesus, I can't do that.
We can do it together.
I can't.
You can.
I won't.
I think we all have trust issues. It's easy to trust, or it's easier to trust when you can see what's coming, when you can see what's ahead. But when you don't know what's ahead, or what's around the corner, or even what's behind you, I think we could all admit there's times where it's just hard to trust. It's hard to trust that there is a plan there and that Jesus has our back on that situation. The disciples were a lot like you and me. We both live day to day not knowing what's coming tomorrow. We both, even though they could see Jesus in the flesh, performing miracles, doing things, they struggled. We wonder sometimes, will it be a good day? Like you maybe look forward tomorrow. Is it going to be a good day? Will there be good things that'll come? Or is it going to be a bad day? I don't know if you're like that. If you're like me, sometimes I wake up kind of going, okay, Lord, I want this to be a good day. I want this to be an uneventful day. I want this to be a day where it just goes smooth sailing and everything's cool. So that's what I really want. But when it doesn't go that way, I begin to wonder, hey, you still there? Did you hear what I asked for? What's going on? It's hard to trust when you don't know the plan. And we read stories of faith and trust from the Bible all the time. And I think it's too often that we don't see the connecting plan. We don't see how they connect together. Because each story that we read about in the New Testament is a day lived by the disciples. It's a day lived by Jesus. Like, in other words, it wasn't just story then story. There was like a whole night that went by between that, or maybe a couple of days, and events and things that happened. And when we connect those dots, I think it helps us to understand a little bit more. And so we're going to do that today. We're going to connect a couple dots of things you may not have known before about a couple of well-known stories. Last week we talked about Jesus feeding the 5,000, and we discovered the fact that it was actually closer to 15,000 people. I mean, it could have even been more, but I think 15,000 is a conservative, safe number to say. These are people who were fed by a miraculous act the disciples took part in. The miracle was different this time because Jesus didn't just touch someone or pray a prayer. Jesus handed it back to the disciples and said, okay, guys. And without any discussion of a plan, without any idea what was coming next, the disciples stood there for a moment going, crickets, what do we do now? And this is a miracle where Jesus had a plan throughout it. And even though it was amazing what happened, the people were fed, there was food left over afterwards, Jesus had a plan from the start. Because later, we'd find out, we know, because we know the end of the book, so to speak, but we'd find out later, Jesus is going to entrust the whole kabit and caboodle to these people. The whole message to be carried forth. He's going to entrust it with these ones. And so it's important to him that he builds trust with these individuals. The plan was for them to believe in him. He asked them all the time, do you believe in me? Who do you say I am? Do you believe in me? Do you believe in what you're seeing? And it's all part of a plan to teach these guys to trust him. So I want to pick up the story where we left off. Jesus had just fed 15,000 people. And after he fed the people, he did a few more hours of miracles. So he's exhausted. Jesus has been praying for people because people, they hear about, take your kids to Jesus and they'll be healed. You got a leper, take them to Jesus, they'll be healed. Blind, they'll see again. So people heard about this, word travels fast, and people came in groves. So these people are here, everybody wanting to get closer to Jesus. They want to experience this healing for themselves. Jesus is exhausted and tired. If you remember before he started the story of the 5,000, he actually his purpose was to get away, have a little retreat for some R&R and some prayer time. And it was interrupted by these people, but he did it anyways. So this all happened. Now Jesus has finished this all, and we pick up our story, Matthew 14, verse 22. Let's see what it says. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. Now, can you imagine? So you're a disciple, and Jesus goes, okay, I want you guys to get in the boat, and like this boat right here. Oh, what are you doing? Don't worry about it. Get in the boat. I'll meet you on the other side of the lake. Okay, so the disciples are starting to head out, and he's like, I'll dismiss the crowd. They're thinking, good luck with that. You know, they're starting to head out, right? Because here's a crowd of people, and they're all still pressing in. Somehow he does it. Jesus dismisses the crowd, and he goes off by himself, continues. Verse 23, after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. So Jesus knew the value of getting some alone time to recharge, refresh. He knew that's important to do, and it's important for all of us to do. Take that time to unplug and refresh and refuel. So he goes up on a mountainside to pray. And I don't know if you think about little things like this, but I think about this question. What did Jesus pray when he was by himself? When no one's listening, and it's not for the benefit of teaching them something while he's doing it, what did he say? To God, his Father. I wonder about these things. We don't really know, but I wonder, what would Jesus say in that moment? It continues. Later that night, he was there alone. So now it was daytime. We're moving into nighttime. Hours are going by. And the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. So wind's blowing against it. They're trying to, if you ever been in a boat trying to go against the wind, I have, you don't move very fast, especially if it's a rowboat or a sailboat. It's tough to move against the wind. But these are experienced fishermen, okay? These are sailors, right? I mean, these are manly men who are used to this, so they're probably just like, let's go, boys, make it happen. You know, they're giving it all they got. They're going against the wind. Continues on. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them. So Jesus decided, now, shortly before dawn, so are you picturing this? Nighttime, it's dark, because shortly before dawn is the darkest time of the night, right? So it's dark, and Jesus decides, been praying all this time by himself. Guys are out there trying to row this boat against the wind. Doesn't seem to really get anywhere. And Jesus decides, I'm going to go out, and I'm going to talk to these guys. Then it says, walking on the lake. Because, you know, why take a boat when you can just walk there? This has never happened before. Now, we've read the story before, so we're like, yeah. No, but just turn off that part of this, as I've heard this before, and look at this with fresh eyes for the first time again. Somebody is walking on top of the water. Laws of physical science have a problem with this. This is not supposed to happen. When you step on water, you're supposed to sink in. This isn't just, and I know some people might say, well, there was probably a sandbar that would, no, there wasn't any sandbar. He's walking on the water. There's like open water. They're the middle of the lake. The sailors, if there had been a sandbar, they would have known. I mean, these are sailors who knew this lake inside and out, the back of their hand. There was nothing. Jesus is walking on water, guys. Crazy. So it's dark. Jesus is walking on top of the water towards the guys. Verse 26. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. Guys, do you see what I see over there? It's a ghost! I'd say quick roll the other way, but we ain't going nowhere! They were terrified because they knew there was nowhere to go, there was nowhere to escape. They're out in the middle of the water, and they were terrified. Now, I know if you're like me, you're thinking they've watched too many movies, guys. You've watched too many movies. They didn't have Netflix. They didn't even have Michigan Chillers or anything like that. Books, you know, they had nothing. They of course, would share ghost stories around the campfire, I'm sure, but these guys aren't victims of a Saturday morning childhood where they just watch too much of Elvira. These guys are seriously in a moment where they're on the water, middle of the lake, it's dark, and they're like, first thing they think of, it's a ghost. Now, if you're like me, reading the Bible, you're thinking, Well, they're disciples, so surely they'd first guess would be, oh, it must be Jesus performing a miracle. No, they're like, it's a ghost! And they scream out in terror. Now remember, these are manly men. These are rough, bust you up kind of guys. And they're out there screaming like little girls because they think a ghost is coming across the lake. Now, if nothing else helps you to see that the Bible is not a made-up story by a group of guys who wanted to indulge themselves to look really good, you don't make yourself look good by writing into the story that we screamed out in fear like little girls because we thought we saw a ghost. If you were writing this up and making this up, you would embellish like, we saw it and we knew it had to be Jesus, because we're disciples and we've been around him a lot, so yeah, it's Jesus. No, that's what they would write. You wouldn't make this stuff up. So we know that Matthew, who's writing this, is writing exactly what happened, not making anything up, not adding to the story to make it interesting. This is what happened. He wrote honestly, he wrote vulnerably, he wrote the truth of what happened to them that night. And the story continues, verse 27. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. In other words, don't freak out. Don't worry. Exclamation point. It is I. Isn't that interesting? All he had to say was, it is I. Don't you kind of know the voice of someone that's really familiar? I think I would know some voices if I heard them across the room from somewhere else. I'd be like, oh, I know who that is. Okay. And that's what Jesus did. Because it was probably dark. It was probably hard to see. Don't be afraid. But they're still thinking to themselves, okay, but how are you there? You're on the water. There's no boat. You see a boat? I don't see a boat. No, he's on the water. But Peter, this is what's so cool about this part. Peter somehow begins to connect the dots in his mind. Peter begins to connect the stories. He begins to connect and begins to understand that, wait. This morning, Jesus took 12 value meals and fed 15,000 people with leftovers. If he can do that, of course he can walk on water. He's connecting these dots. And Peter's putting it together that, wait a minute, Jesus has been teaching us all along to trust him, to believe in him, to know that this is real. Like, he's not held back by elements like water. Jesus is more powerful than any of that. Like, he's putting it together. He's beginning to see it. Verse 28, excuse me. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied. Lord, if it's you. Peter's in this position where he's like, okay, Lord, if that's you, I don't know about you, I've been there before at moments. I've been in moments in my life where I've been like, okay, God, if this is you, I'm about to do something really crazy, but if this is you, Lord, I want to make sure it's you before I say what I'm about to say or before I'm doing what I'm about to do. If it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. This is so huge, guys. So huge. Peter didn't connect all the dots and then go, no. Peter didn't do that. Peter didn't go, in Jesus' name, I'm going to walk to you, Jesus. My faith is there and I believe it. I'm going to take the power. I'm going to wield the power. No. Peter connected it. He's like, wait. I can't do this. It's not me. The power is not me. The power is not my belief. The power is my belief in him. I believe that if he tells me to come, then I can come. I can walk on the water if he tells me. But I'm not foolish enough to just step out there without knowing he told me to first. Peter's putting it together. How many times have we seen this around us where people have said, in Jesus' name, I want this, so I'm claiming it. Have you heard people say that? I'm claiming this because I want this. And then it doesn't work out. And they're like, God must not be real. God must not be real because he didn't answer my prayer. Why wouldn't he answer my prayer? I asked for this. I asked in his name. Said, ask anything in my name and you'll have it, right? Peter connects the dots and realizes, no. It's like, no. You can ask him my name, but wait for the reply. Lord, if it's you, tell me. I know how this works. I get it. You tell me, it'll work. I think of it, I just do it on my own, foolhardily, without even checking to see if it's you, it won't work. Peter connects it together here. So verse 29, Jesus says, come. Jesus, can you imagine? Jesus is probably like, oh, he's got it. He's got it. Come on. Probably that Matrix moment, like, right? He's like, come. Come is all he had to say. So now Peter's heard him say come. Now Peter has a choice. All right, well, he said come. I mean, I believe if he says this, I connected the dots. The edge of the boat's here, the water's there. Yep, that's water. Yep, okay, so I am just going to do this now, right? I trust you, Jesus. I'm going for it. So Peter got down out of the boat. And they had to take some time, right? Because, I mean, the boat's not just like it's not like a little bath threshold you just step over. This is like you got to get up over the side. The guys are probably all going, what are you doing, man? Shh. Isn't it interesting Peter was the only one to do this? Isn't it interesting that Peter was the only disciple to catch this? Peter's like stepping out. He gets out of the boat. And that first moment had to be like, right? I'm coming, just a second. That first moment wondering, what's going to happen as my foot touches this? It's going to feel wet. I know it's going to feel wet, but what do I do then? What if I start feeling it come up over my toes? What do I do? Those thoughts are going through his head. But Peter walked on the water. So here's the moment. He's like, it's probably a little bit like, like when your kids take their first steps, there's a little bit of that, it's like it's working. He's got that moment where it's working. There's Jesus, there's him. Keeping my eyes on Jesus. There's Jesus, there's me. But then he starts to feel the water on his ankle. Whoa, get a little high there. Hey, I'm with you, Jesus. Maybe a splash a little bit, because remember, it's windy. There's some waves. And he came towards Jesus. So he begins to walk towards Jesus now. He's walking. He's like, okay. Because maybe one foot goes down a little bit more than the other one that time. He's starting to wonder, like, okay, am I doing this right? All these thoughts start going through his mind. He's fighting himself. But I dare you to pray the Peter's prayer. I dare you to pray that prayer in your life where you say, Lord, if it's you, tell me and I'll come to you. If it's you, invite me to step out of my boat. Open the doorway, Lord. If it's you, I'll do it. At some point, we all need to get involved and volunteer in some way, to enlist for the effort. Because what Jesus did, Jesus didn't just teach this for the sake of teaching and hearing it. He taught it with the sake of all of us taking a message as a disciple and presenting it to others. Like, we're supposed to do something with this. We're not supposed to be listeners only. We're supposed to be doers with it. Like, what do I do with it, Lord? And he's inviting us to do that. And we learned last week that God showed us that if you'll do what you can do, like, in other words, I'm not asking you to do more than what you can do. Do what you can do, and I'll take care of the rest. Step out, like, in other words, Peter knew, I can step out if you tell me to. But this whole sinking thing or not sinking thing, Jesus has got to take care of that. And I'm trusting, I'm believing he'll take care of that. And that's all God's asking of us, is trust me. And do your part, I'll do my part. And I know for some of us, for some of you maybe watching, maybe you're in the room, you're saying to yourself, okay, it's hard because of what happened before. Or it's hard because I feel this way right now. At this point in my life, this feels like it's a crazy step for me to take. And Peter had to feel that way. Peter had to feel like, look, we've been rowing all night long. Can you imagine rowing all night long? We've done some rowing machines. Can you imagine rowing all night? Even if they took turns, they're exhausted. There's a part of Peter that had to say, hey, Jesus, it's cool you're walking on the water, but can we just take a nap and talk about this later? There's a part of him that had to be tired and exhausted and feel like this was an inconvenient time for another lesson from Jesus. After being up all night, hello, have you been up all night with kids? I know some of you have. And it's like, that's not the time to have a Jesus moment. That's the time where I want a bedtime, sleepy by moment. But Peter says, okay, call me, tell me, and I'll come to you. For some of you, it's something like, hey, you know what? I like babies. I think I could love on a baby, so maybe I'm being called to help in the baby nursery, and that'll be my thing. I can love on babies. I can hold them. I can even change a diaper pretty good. Maybe that's my thing. For some of you, it's like, okay, Matt, I'm not into the whole diaper thing, whoo, nope, not me. But I know how to have fun. I mean, you want to have fun? I know how to have fun. Fun is my middle name. My friends know me. They're like, hey, that's a really fun person. You know, I can have fun. So is there anything for a fun person? And I would tell you, yes. It's called teen youth ministry. Because here's the thing. If you know how to have fun, that's the magic ticket. That's the bottom line. We can take those experiences you've always wished you could do, as long as they're legal and within a certain limit. We can do those experiences with our teenagers, and they'll love it. You'll be the rock hero, and something will be accomplished, because now we'll encourage students to listen to a message being taught. How did they get to the place where they wanted to listen? Simple. It just had fun first. Jesus fed people before he ministered to the people. And we can have some fun before we minister to the students. So there's ways that God can use us. Maybe you're like, hey, you know what? I'm friendly. I don't mind being friendly. Maybe you could be somebody who helps welcome people on a Sunday morning. There's lots of opportunities for what we can do. But I think the point is to ask God, call me out of the boat. So back to Peter. So he's actually walking on water at this moment. Crazy. And again, it's crazy to me that he's the only, like, what are the other disciples doing? Are they all just kind of like, they're probably like, is this really happening right now? Peter is walking out there with him? This is crazy. Remember, how would you react to somebody walking on water? But it's all about faith. It's all about trust. And Peter got it. He connected the dots. And he didn't look at his limitations. Peter didn't look at the fact that he didn't know how to do this. He looked at the fact that Jesus knows how, and I trust him, so I'm going to step out and I'm going to do this. So verse 30. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me! He saw the wind. Maybe the wind was bringing a big, huge wave. And he's just like, ah! You know, like your moment you see a tidal wave coming towards you. Lord, save me! I'm going to go down. This isn't working. What's going on? Verse 31, immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. Now, you might read this and think Jesus was like, you have little faith. Come on, why did you doubt? Get over here. No, I think it was like this. I think it was you have little faith. Why did you doubt me? I think it's that moment, like a loving father brushing the dust off your little guy and saying, you can do it. Come on. You almost had it that time. Get back on the bike. Let's try it one more time. I think you've almost got it. Come on. Trust me. You can do this. That's the moment I saw. That's the moment I see with Jesus. He's just like, oh man, Peter, out of everybody, you did it. You got it. You put it together and you stepped out of the boat. Verse 32. And when they climbed into the boat, so Jesus and Peter climbed into the boat, everybody's like, whoa. The wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Truly, we're believers now. I mean, it was one thing to see you feed 15,000 people with that little bit of food. It was one thing to see you heal blind people, but now I believe. Doubt was even there for disciples who had seen miracles with their own eyes day after day. They still struggled with doubt because, look, it's at this moment they go, we believe now. And, you know, part of you is thinking, well, where have you been for the last 15 chapters, man? But no, they believe now. It's like, yes, we get it. Just like us, they struggled to see it and believe it, even when it was right in front of their faces. Doubt is difficult to eliminate, and we make it hard for people to earn their trust back once they've broken trust with us. We can make it really tough for people. And like the disciples, we can make it tough on God as well. You know, I remember when we started Silver Creek Church, that was my stepping out of the boat moment. One of stepping out of the boat moments for me in my life. And we all have many of these moments in our life where we'll take a faith step and say, okay, I think I'm supposed to do this. And I know you've called me. I hear you. Like, are you calling me? Yep. That's if it's you, Lord, tell me, okay. And I heard God say, come on, step out of the boat and do this. And when I did that, circumstances around me didn't just fall into place. I remember a moment where Rachel and I are praying after months after we've decided we're stepping out of the boat, and I'm officially unemployed at this point because I've decided, okay, I'm going to take like a space of time before I actually start the new church from where I left the church I was at before as I prepared for this moment, like I'm going to do this. So I left behind me a salary and all the benefits and pay, and okay, I'm going to step out of the boat and do this. And I remember in that moment, we thought there were a lot of things that were going to fall into place. Like we had plans, lots of great plans. And we thought it was all going to, and as those plans began to not work out, as things we thought were reliable sources that would come in didn't come in, and as we thought that these people were surely going to, and they didn't, we began to ask ourselves, whoops, did we miss something here? Did we make a mistake, or is this supposed? It's a logical question to ask yourself, but we quickly told ourselves, no, I think we're supposed to do this. I think this is what it's like to have the water splash you on your knees, and you're like, it's on my knees. Not any higher. I think it's that moment where it's like, is this supposed to be? And I'll never forget, I was having lunch with a couple of associate pastors that were part of a rather large church. And we knew we had a goal of raising it was like $30,000 to be able to just, to start a church is not cheap. I mean, you've got all kinds of equipment to buy and things, the seats we sit on, the carpet, everything, it costs money. And we had a budget of that, and $30,000 in the world of starting churches is a very low, cheap budget. Most will have hundreds of thousands of dollars because they usually raise their money for support for the pastor, like they'll have salaries, but we chose not to do that. We had put a little bit of money in our savings account, and we had said, we're going to trust God, that I think this is how God wants us to do it. It's what we believe. So we stepped out, and we were looking for $30,000, and at this point, we had raised like $5,000. A lot of amazing people had given in $5,000, and there was $5,000. So that's good, but that's a long way from where we got to be. And months have gone by now. We're into like 6 months into the fundraising process, and it's like, where is this money going to come from, Lord? It just feels like everything we thought we were going to align with didn't work out. And so I'm having lunch with this pastor of a rather large church, and I was hoping if they could give us a couple $1,000s, that would be amazing. Would really help us out. And as we were talking, and they were asking me, what's the vision God gave you? What do you want to do for this church? Where is it at? And I'm talking about, well, we're going to start in Birch Run. It's for that whole region of northern Genesee County and southern Saginaw County, and we want to create a church where people who have never been to church a day in their life would feel like it wasn't a weird, foreign, alien environment, that they would actually feel welcomed, loved, and want to come back. That kind of environment where there's no judgment, that kind of environment where people will feel loved, no matter what race, no matter where they come from, that they would all somehow fit together as a weird, eclectic, combined family. And as I was sharing this, those guys are just like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. That's amazing. They said, we want to support you in what you're doing. And so they hand me a check. And as they handed me the check, I'm like, am I seeing this correctly? Because they handed me a check for over $20,000. And I'm like, I didn't expect this much from one place. And I cried. I couldn't help myself but cry at that table, because it was like that moment where I realized, truly, you are the Son of God. Truly, you have called me to this. And it's been scary. I felt that water splashing on my knees, Lord. I'm just going to say it was scary. But man, this moment was another one of those moments in life where God says, I've got your back. I've got your back. And the rest is history, as they say. Here we are today because of something amazing God had done. I had no idea that was coming. If I could have had the plan, I would have probably breathed a lot easier. But I didn't have the plan. I didn't get the playbook. I didn't get to peek ahead in the book and see what was coming. And neither do we get to in our lives. I think, like the disciples, I was unsure sometimes. I doubted sometimes. I didn't know what to do sometimes. But the thing that happened, the thing that we need to pay attention to, is that Peter stepped out of the boat. And we can step out of the boat, because courage is not a skill of eliminating fear. Too often we mix that up. We think courage is all about, like, okay, I'm going to get really courageous, which means I'm going to take out all fear of my mind. I'm going to eliminate all fear from my mind. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not afraid. That's not what courage is. Courage is admitting the fear, actually. It's admitting the fear. It's like saying, okay, the fear is real. I feel it. I'm scared right now. The disciples cried out in fear. They admitted it. We cried out. We thought it was a ghost. And moving forward anyways. Courage really is admitting the fear and moving towards it despite the fact that I'm afraid. It's like saying, okay, I'm afraid. I know I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyways. And trust requires courage. Trust requires courage for us to act. Peter had to have courage to actually step over the side of that wooden boat. He had to have the courage to do that. And so I would just say to you, what's the matter? Are you scared? And if you say yes, I'd say, good. You're on the right track. Admit it. You're on the right track. That's good. Admit the fear and move forwards towards it. That's what courage is. And that is what Jesus is calling us to at the end of the day with trust. Trust me. Take courage because I've got your back. I'm going to catch you every single time. But you got to trust me. Can we bow our heads and pray? Heavenly Father, help us to act in courage. Help us to have the courage to ask the question like Peter did. Tell me if it's you, Jesus. If it's you, call me out of this boat. Call me out of my boat. So help us, God, to have the courage to ask those kinds of questions, to truly trust you, to show you that we do trust you, God. Help us to do this each and every day as we wake up in the morning to start off our day saying, Lord, what do you have for me today? I don't have to know all the details. All I got to know is I trust you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So if we can stand up together, we're going to sing one last song together before we close service.
All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Sing it out, say. All the earth will shout your